I couldn't find our usual countdown. I was expecting, I really struggled there. So welcome to Got Something For You. We're really excited to have you all here today so we can talk about episode 10 of Survivor 45. Here we go. That's the stuff right there. That's what we were missing.
There we go.
Found it.
Yeah, right. I love our intro. I think it's so much fun. I was really waiting for the little Jeff Probst sound bites. Do I dare do it again? I don't know if we can waste 30 seconds to another countdown because we're here now to talk about episode 10. Phil, how'd you feel about this episode?
I thought this episode was fantastic. And look, R.I.P. Bruce. I was actually hoping that he was going to pull out his third win there. I was like really honestly hoping for that against Austin. But overall, I thought the episode was fantastic, super entertaining, and I'm excited to talk about it with you.
Yeah, right. I think there was so many good things happening in terms of gameplay here, in terms of storytelling. The editors have been taking like really big swings when it comes to the edits. And we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get into the boys' night, girls' night type of situation that ended up happening. But Ollie, over to you as well. Was this another hit of an episode for you personally?
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed the episode. I thought it was a really good kind of development episode. Not to say that there wasn't anything like spicy that happened, obviously. But I feel like we really got to see a lot of developments on people, good and bad. So that's what I'm taking from this episode, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious to hear which castaways got the good and which castaways got the bad from your perspective. I mean, we start the episode off coming back from Tribal Council. Kendra was just voted out, and Jake says he's back in the game as a player and not as a pawn. So that's a very interesting soundbite that they had for Jake. Do you both feel that way about his game?
Well, I think this is the interesting part here, Matt. I have been beating this drum that since the beginning of the season, we've sort of had these intercut, confessionals of Jake reminding us that he's still in this game. But in a weird way, at the ends of every episode, we see him completely out of votes, surviving by the skin of his teeth, to honestly, usually not to the efforts of his own, but rather to the mistakes of other people. And look, I'm a man that will always accept when I am wrong. I have been saying for the past few weeks, I believe that Jake is going to win this game. I think there's something going on with his edit. In a weird way, I think this might have been the episode where I broke. I don't know if I necessarily see it anymore. It's hard to see. Every single tribal, it's hard to see. What do you make of it, Ollie?
Yeah, I mean, right now, for me, he really is kind of getting the Owen Knight treatment. Like, it's when you lot were all being like, he's the winner. I'm like, right now he's giving Owen Knight, and I'm like, ugh. But yeah, I mean, we definitely saw kind of some good things happen with Jake this episode, but for me, it wasn't enough to kind of warrant a let's watch out for Jake. I still feel like there's a lot of big hurdles Jake has to navigate. And I feel like that's going to be a big struggle with this end portion. Not to say it can't be done, because we've seen many people do it at the end. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what you can do in this later stage.
I'm not ready to call Jake out quite yet for the win. Although I do feel like there are other players that are playing a better game than Jake currently is at this moment in time. That's without a doubt and without question. There are still editing things that are happening. And listen, I've been proven wrong about a couple of different seasons about Survivor at this point, so that's okay. We'll take it with a grain of salt. But check out our Survivor UK coverage if you'd like to know that as well. But that being said, there are still Jake's still in the game. There are still editing clues that are going into this narrative. If he's not a winner, I can still see him making it to the end. But we'll pick up on some of these as they happen. I mean, obviously, we have to just state the fact that Jake is really good in his confessionals. And sometimes a really great confessional doesn't necessarily mean anything about the placement of Castaway in the game. Sometimes the producers get lucky with a situation like that, but you have to also play a great game. And I feel like Jake has really wanted to there was a move that Jake was going to make. It was the forcing a tie between Julie and I forget who the other castaway was involved in that. And Who?
Was it him?
Was it going to be between Jake and Julie? No, I don't think he was on the radar yet at that point. But
Oh
it was
no, Julie
between
and Caleb. Julie and
and
Caleb.
Caleb.
That's
And
what
he
it was. Yes, I was thinking too. I was like,
I was like,
It wasn't going to be him. But if that move had happened, he would have been on a lot of people's list as someone to win the game, but it didn't. And now he's sort of facing the consequences of that. And we have Drew, who also points out that people are aiming right past Jake as a target. He's still somehow in the game. And Drew says that Bruce also has a lot of power with the idol, right? And he's winning the challenges, and it makes it really difficult to flush the idol and get it out of the game. And this is where it's sort of the idea that Bruce has to be the one to go next comes into play. But we get that intro clue of the idol, right? I like the intro clues. How do you two feel about it?
I always clock the intro clues now. As soon as I see the title, I'm like, what's the clue? What's the clue? I'm like, ooh. So when I saw the idol, I was waiting to hear what it was. And obviously throughout this episode, we'll talk about the idol or the not having the idol.
Yeah, that was quite the lie, wasn't it?
that was, and again, I'm gonna be honest. Like the first time I heard it, I was like, oh wait, could this work? It's a very interesting way to go. And then the second that he told Katurah, he was like, hey, I just lied to you. Was it believable? I was like, oh yeah, this is going nowhere. This is going absolutely nowhere. This is a terrible plan.
Yep.
Bad news. Bad news bears.
Yeah, I kind of agree with it. So basically, everyone who watched the episode knows Bruce was like, okay, I'm just going to tell Katurah that Kelly left with my idol, right? Because that way I could just say, oh, I was worried about the knowledge is power. I gave it to Kelly. Kelly left. I don't have my idol anymore. But I think it was too little too late at that point because we had the Kendra vote in between that time. And then also, like, I like the idea of testing out the lie on someone, but I wouldn't openly, like, I don't know how I feel. I don't know if he should have admitted, like, it was a lot. Maybe he should have just gauged her thing and then gone from there. But it was an interesting tactic.
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, why do it to Katurah? Like, why could, like, as you both have been saying, like, oh, it's great that we're now finally on the same page because you have to be. But as soon as Bruce said what he said, I sat there and I was like, why are you saying it now? And what I was thinking is later on in the episode when I think Katurah exposed it, and Dee said the exact same thing I was thinking of. Why didn't he say it the night Kelly got voted off then? Because right there and then, that's the first thing I thought of. I was like, why did you not mention it last round? Because then everyone would have known, like everyone would have believed it more. So yeah, as soon as he said that, I was like, there's the pothole. Let's see how many people can find it. And they did.
Yeah, it unfortunately did not take a rocket scientist to discover that Bruce was lying here. That said, I agree, Ali. I think that, frankly, like I really want to know what this would have looked like if he did this to Jake. Jake was the first person that he touched space with, and then he immediately told Jake, hey, Jake, I'm just testing out my lie on you. What'd you think? Once again, two Boston boys. I do think that it would have gone over better. I mean, he ultimately did pick the, like, absolute worst person to do this with. So it's hard to say that it would not have gone at least better. But I want to know if it would have, I don't know, if it could have bought him some extra time here. But, yeah, just unfortunately a bit misplayed.
Maybe but also like maybe not, because he had already won 2 individual immunity challenges. People had already seen him as a threat. I guess the idea would be that like people would put all of their votes on him. He would play it for himself, and then he would have control over who ended up going home. But this, you mentioned something, Phil, that I also wanted to get your opinion on, because about 2 weeks ago, while the three of us were together, we were saying Jake and Bruce won't split up. Like, they will never split up. They were so close. And then all of a sudden, a week after that, I think it was Ollie and myself who were here. They sort of, Bruce started separating himself from Jake based on Jake's reaction to Kelly being the one to get voted out instead of himself. And then also in this episode, we see Jake and Bruce both very much being like, we got to separate from each other. I mean, what is your perspective on this?
Well, I mean, look, I think that it's very similar to sort of how Kelly felt at one point, where Jake was like, hey, I think just even being close proximity to this person who at the moment is a bit of like a social pariah, could sort of like have me get banished, have like my name dragged through the mud. And so, on top of that, I think that even through that, Jake was willing to stick by Bruce and be his friend, at least be someone that he can talk to. But then we see that, Jake finds out that Bruce lied to him. And, in Jake's game where he has constantly been the one on the outside, I think that it's sort of hit on like a really tender string within his body where he was like, oh my God, like I'm being lied to again. And at this point, I'm not even being lied by the power structure. I'm being lied by debatably like the person on the lowest rung of this game. Like if they feel like they can lie to me, where must I be? And for what it's worth, like I hear him. That can't feel good.
No, it can't. And you know what also probably doesn't feel too good is betraying people who you gave your word to, which Julie is also struggling with at this point too. She woke up, she had a horrible night of sleep, says that betraying Kelly and Kendra really affected her mindset, and is used to being a very trustworthy and loyal person, and is having a lot of trouble with the betrayal aspect, and even has this really great emotional moment with Drew where they both kind of get emotional together about the game. And Julie's kind of coming to terms with, at some point, her alliance is going to have to start turning on each other. Her alliance of Dee, Drew, and Austin. Who's got to be the first person to take this swing? I think it's got to be Julie.
Yeah, it's got to be Julie. I mean, I feel like you saw kind of her, not breaking point, but you saw kind of a tender moment with her there because sleep deprived, probably starving. Like she, at that moment, not having a good sleep, she just crapped. And I think she said it best herself. She was like, the role that she's been put in this kind of Reba 4 is kind of not one of any kind of substance. Like, and I feel like she acknowledged that really well because she's been known as the mama bear, and she's like, she's almost the one that kind of has to be the nice person with the knife behind her. And when that's completely not your personality, it can be hard. And we saw that. You mentioned the chat that she had with Drew, and I know you were saying it was heartfelt, but I mean, she kind of went to Drew like, the thing is, she did go to Drew like being like, oh, I'm just having a really tough time, da 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 da. But if you'd listen to what Drew was saying,
okay, go ahead.
Because he was sat there like, no, we can't turn on each other. Like he was talking about the alliance. He wasn't talking about because she was upset about what she'd had to do with kind of the jury management aspect and actually feeling sad about having to portray these people and it actually taking its toll. Drew was just being like, oh, please don't turn on us. We can't. And I was like, bro. I was like, she's actually sad. Like, you just need to console her. Like, don't worry about the alliance. Like, so when I was listening to Drew, and I was just like,
Phil, what was your take on this conversation?
I can be completely different on this.
Now, look, I think it's interesting because if you were to ask me this right before, if I had not seen the Next Time on Survivor, and you were to ask me this question, I think that I would have been fully with you, Matthew. I would have said, Ollie, what the hell are you talking about? You are a wild man to see it this way. However, seeing the Next Time on, where we literally hear Drew calling out Julie's name, Julie calling out Drew's name, it does make me look like, think about Ollie's, sort of take on this conversation here with a little bit of weight. Because you're right, Ollie, like clearly, even though there were waterworks and consoling, and to your point, Matthew, like I totally read this as being like a genuine moment, and I was like, oh wow, they started off this game. Julie said that this kid reminds her of her son, and here we are, some weeks later, in television watching time, in game time, it's like day 12. No, okay, but they, they're sitting next to each other having like waterworks, and it felt very tender, like it did. I was getting a little emotional. I was like, oh man, this is awesome. They're sort of like able to reestablish what they sort of established so early in the game, and the Next Time on actually kind of caught me by surprise, personally.
Yeah, I agree, and I think we had And it's a good call out too, because Phil, you're right. I was really just reading it within the context of the episode itself. But great call out to that next time on Survivor at the end of the episode, where it seems like the big theme of the episode is going to be Reba turning against each other. Of course, we'll see if that actually plays out. I know Ollie very excited as well on my end. But Ollie, I mean, you're correct. It's great that you also just paid attention. You didn't get distracted by the music that was playing or the story. The narrative of that segment was really more so focused on Julie than Drew. But you were good.
Yeah.
Good on you to pay attention to what Drew was actually saying in that moment. We had George in our who left a comment on one of our last videos. Hi, George. Good to see you again. I need you to tell me how to say your full account name. It says, if Emily can rally the troops, they can start to get out Reba. So that was in response to what hopefully episode 10 brought. And now Emily did rally the troops, but it wasn't against Reba. And I think that question that we have to ask ourselves throughout the rest of today's episode is that a bad thing? Is it a bad thing that Emily and OG Bello didn't target Reba this episode? Because as we're going to maybe see, Reba is almost deciding that they're going to have to start targeting each other soon.
Sorry, I was looking at the person's name. I think it's Georgette Sparkles.
Oh, Georgette. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Ollie.
Sorry, that's why I was like, what was the question?
Yeah.
Georgette Sparkles 1446. Thank you for commenting. We really appreciate it.
We love you, George. Do you want to set this up for Ollie again?
I think it's really just something to keep in mind for the rest of this episode, because there is a tactic there, which is okay. Reba is the majority right now, right? Like there is a lot of Reba on this tribe. They're very tight and close together. It would seem like the opportune thing would be, all right, the 4 people who aren't on Reba, we're at the final 8. We gotta stick together at this point. That being said, we could argue if they did stick together, if they did end up voting out Julie at the end, which was in contention, would that have dismantled the original Reba alliance, or would it have made the original Reba alliance even stronger to that point? That's something that needs to be considered.
I mean, it's an interesting, I feel like this happens pretty often in Survivor, actually, where, so we have this group of 4, right? And at this point, it's the final 8, so it looks like a 4v4. And so, by the way, I'm the new Bruce with my finger math here, but it's an even 4v4 in the abstract. 4 Reba, 4 non-Reba, right? And it makes sense that they're sticking together so strongly because they feel like that's their only option to move forward as a 4. But what always happens, in my opinion, this happens too often. The second that they get a true lead, the second it becomes 4-3. Which is this next cycle here, they go, oh, well, we can't all get to the end, and that's when the break is. And I think that this is sort of the threshold of them finally having true majority as a 4 in the entire game, where it's like, oh, there's now 7, and I do feel like they're finally going to crack next episode. But while it is definitely a little surprising they did not crack sooner, it does not surprise me that they are now sort of starting to turn and look at each other.
I think the only reason they haven't cracked, it's taken potentially as long as next episode for them to crack, is I think because they saw how much everyone else was cracking. I mean, you had Bello, who just dysfunctional. So they were all they knew was, look, if we want to get an easy ride down to kind of the deep end of the game, let them crack, let them falter, and we'll just do it like that. So I think that's why they've been able to hold on for as long as possible, because they had a very, I don't want to say easy, but they had they saw what they needed to do, and it was easily achievable because they just had to play on the fact that Bello were going to continue being dysfunctional and all hate Bruce.
I think the idea of weakening Bruce or keeping Bruce as a target really played into, as you're both were saying, really played into OG Reba's, that core alliance, their strategy there. I mean, do you remember when Jay Maya was voted out and we were all like, well, that's the end of Reba, because all of a sudden they were, you don't want to think about it?
It's traumatic.
Still salty. You know what? But I really thought at that point, in the game that the Reba alliance would actually that it was bad for them because it all of a sudden they didn't have the majority and now they do. So it's really interesting to see how that all played out. I think Bruce's target was really, really good for them this whole time. And then we go to the reward challenge, which was a good challenge. I enjoyed it. The winner of this challenge wins a trip to the Sanctuary, where they will be getting a turkey dinner reminiscent of the US holiday Thanksgiving. And they also get to spend the night at the Sanctuary too, a nice sleepover.
Can I ask,
Please.
are we getting tired of the Sanctuary?
Yes.
Yes.
I don't want to be the only person ringing this bell here. We're tired of the Sanctuary, right?
If I may say a curse word, fuck the Sanctuary. I've had enough of it. So sorry.
I should have told you we can't do that.
Do not be sorry. Do not be sorry.
Sorry.
Dude, like,
but I just, it was, do you know what it was? And here's my rant. So sorry. This is the thing. Survivor 45 and the new era of Survivor, I have now officially been getting on board with, and I really enjoy it. My issue is, and I think this also, it doesn't help that obviously me and Matthew are watching Survivor UK, and I feel like Survivor UK are doing a really good job at making the rewards something, because like Survivor UK, their rewards have been really like, they've been able to go somewhere different, and it's been like a different scene. The Sanctuary is the same old. And it was like when, oh my God, who was it? It was Julie, Kendra, and Bruce, when they all went to have the chicken. It was just the Sanctuary with the chicken in the middle. And I was like, what good's happening here? You're just getting some chicken. Like back in season 15, they had like they had a reward of free chicken. So you could have like eggs and then cook them when you needed to. And now it's like the Sanctuary where you can have this chicken. I'm like, I understand it is new era, but you know what? I'm just over the Sanctuary. I need something else. I need shamans.
The Sanctuary served its purpose when, you know, the pandemic was at an all-time high and that there was less wiggle room to get away from the filming locations that were set up for Survivor 41 and 42. I get that. I understand that. And like, I think we've seen unnamed versions of the Sanctuary in past seasons, but they were always mixed in with something else, or they were always disguised as something else. Like, oh, you're going to go to a cafe that has all of this. And it was a set that production built, but they made it feel like it was something a bit more unique.
Yeah.
I think the Sanctuary has played out. I agree with you both. Ollie, I know that this is not a Survivor UK podcast, but we need to have a talk about those awards. But I wonder what the next step from here is. I wouldn't mind if they built new set pieces and just, you know, artificial scenery and called it a cafe or a restaurant. I wouldn't mind that at all. And I think like Australian Survivor does a great job of sometimes the reward. Do you know those things where an Australian Survivor, it's the tribe that wins goes, but only one person can go in and enjoy it at a time.
Yes.
And sometimes there's an advantage hidden in there.
Yes.
Let's start doing something like that with US Survivor. I think that would be a lovely idea.
I'll say this: it's very, very Heroes, Healers, Hustlers. I remember it, and it makes it a very memorable scene with the spaghetti, and they could only go in one at a time and eat the spaghetti. And at the bottom, there was the advantage, and everyone's trying to sort of hide it and make sure that, you know, see who saw it, whatever. You know, they're throwing the plate over. You know, they're doing all these different things. Like you're right. That makes it way more interesting than like, oh, Sanctuary again.
Phil, great call. And we also have Mackenzie in our live chat or our Ancient Voices. Mackenzie, thank you so much for joining and for commenting. Agreed, the Sanctuary and the small rewards are just not as fun these days. At least it's not the grilled cheese and beef stew rewards from 41.
Oh.
Good call, Mackenzie. Great call. Yeah, I think it's time that the rewards get an updated or a reskinning of some sort. I think it would be great.
I will say the Sanctuary, like how it's been this episode, you stay over the night.
Yeah,
absolutely fine. If they make it so that's the Sanctuary, because to me, when I hear Sanctuary, it's pillows, blankets, like having that comfort.
It's not just a platter of chicken.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. I think the staying the night is something special. But we get a pretty cool challenge. We had another like come from behind storyline with Emily, who was sort of the underdog of this challenge and was able to finish it before anyone else, meaning that she won the reward. And this was a really great, I thought it was a great character moment for Emily. I loved seeing everyone sort of rally behind her and support her. And it was a nice reveal that people had been saying to Emily, like, hey, if we win, like, we'll bring you. You haven't been before. You'll, you know, and it was so great that the payoff of that was that Emily was the one to win it herself. And Jeff reveals that not only is she getting a night away from camp and that lovely turkey dinner, but she is getting letters from home as well. This was nice. And
it's always very nice. We love seeing it.
I think it is good. And in a season where they haven't been doing the family visits, I think the letters from home mean something way more now than ever before. Do you all agree with who she chose to go with her?
Yeah.
I definitely think that it was a smart choice. I mean, for what it's worth, she already has bonds with Austin and Drew. I mean, how great or not great those bonds are is another question and conversation, but she already has a bond with Drew and Austin. So, you know, bringing them on the reward, does it strengthen that? Sure. But there's also a chance that it does absolutely nothing versus bringing the ladies. They have something to all sort of bond over. They sort of have like a united front. They're able to talk about. It's just she's able to broaden who she has connection with, which is important. It's always important in this game.
Well, also, I kind of want to give not defend, but when I was listening to Emily's reasonings, she actually had genuine reasons. She was like, Dee has constantly been talking about her family. Julie, she's a mum. We can tell she hasn't been sleeping. Like, she needs this for her, like she needs this for her body. Because like she gave legitimate reasons that weren't game related. And to me, like, if people then kind of took that, like, I'm glad no one kind of held it against her, because I feel like that's when you'd see like kind of the more devilish side of people. I just thought this, because I mentioned that this was like good developments for people. I feel like this was, we really saw a good character arc in Emily. And it started with her winning this reward, and you see that kind of belief in herself. And then obviously we'll get to the sanctuary, but I feel like it was the start of a really good arc for Emily this episode. And considering she's the only one left in my draft, I was very happy to see it. So I can't.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. Also, sorry, isn't this the second time in a row with this particular reward challenge that it has been all females that have gone on this specific one? Because I feel like 44, wasn't it? It was Lauren, Carolyn, Heidi, and Jamie. Or Franny. Franny.
Possibly. I don't recall at this point. Maybe though. You're unlocking a memory for me, Ollie, but I can't confirm or deny that truth.
No, it was Franny, Lauren, Carolyn, and Heidi, because Franny won it and then she took those three because they were all mums. Big brain.
Survivor analyst Ollie proving why he's got the mind for this game. I agree. I think with Emily that this was sometimes with choosing who you go on a reward with, it is a make or break decision where you need strategy first in terms of who you need to bring. But I don't think Emily was in that position. And I liked, again, Ollie, to your point, the reasonings that she chose. It was nice. And we, of course, see the devastation of the players that were not picked. And, you know, sort of how much this reward really could have meant to everyone on that cast. So this led to some really nice, I would say it's some really funny editing. Some, you know, I'm of course thinking about the boys' night editing with the song from Top Gun. I thought that was a really interesting and inspired choice, talking about the editors this season taking really big swings with their editing choices and styles. I feel like with Survivors like 41 through 44, it was a lot of like, all right, let's just throw every twist that we possibly could think of, every advantage that we possibly could think of, and see what sticks. And then now it's like, okay, let's try to make every editing decision that we could possibly make, see what flows with the story. So I appreciate that. I like that we're trying to like evolve the storytelling of Survivor. I mean, we can start with the sanctuary. I think this was really nice. Not much happens here, except of course we do get some really heartfelt moments when they all read their letters. I thought that this was really, really beautiful to watch. A great cinematography and editing choices here as well. I was really impressed with how they decided to film this, kind of the camera panning to everyone and zooming in on different people as they're having their moments. I thought that was fantastic. So any highlights from the letter reading that either of you want to bring up?
Phil?
Yeah, I mean, I think that everyone sort of got something very nice and personal. You know, obviously we have, Katora, and sort of getting a letter from someone that she has not heard from in years, one of her parents. And, like, that is, that was like really touching and nice, and especially for someone who has had like a narrative that really, unfortunately, has not even involved her for a lot of her own narrative. It's been like her view on someone else. It was nice to sort of get that view on herself and her own life. It was also really nice to sort of see, like, Dee reading her note in Spanish, which was like really, really cool. It sort of is like a nod, a tip of the hat to her culture. And, in fact, it's like, her parents are going to send, her letter in their native tongue. It's awesome. And we also get from Emily, get a little bit of her backstory. We get, Emily's had this like long time partner who she's hoping to move in with. Like, it was really, 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 really nice. I think I really liked all aspects of it, to be honest. Yeah.
Eric's an icon.
Eric is an icon. He's a very nice beard, very nice facial.
No, but yeah, every person got something. Katora's mum moment did actually make me feel really emotional, because we kind of just saw her heart just open. And I feel like we kind of see that affect her for a little bit in the episode, but she's able to bounce back. And Julie's kids just like willing her on and kind of saying, like, we know you've had some stuff going on, like, but you are powerful, you are strong. Yeah, everyone had the moments. The only other thing I want to call out was Emily's confessionals with her wine. I loved it. It was very Mike White. It was Mike White from David versus Goliath. I was like loving this.
That's a good call out. That's a really good call out. I noticed that too.
I can't tell if it's like production being like, hey, why don't you just bring the wine glass? Or if it's Emily being like, can I take this with me? You can only enjoy it for as much time as you're there, so why not? And then we cut to back at the camp with the rest of the tribe who did not go on the reward. We get this just like, for the people who enjoyed this, I'm so happy you got to enjoy this. I'm so happy it was fun. I thought it was fun at points. I liked the choice. Ollie, from our coverage of Survivor UK, you know how I feel about using music that is like licensed music, something that is on like the top 40 type of things. I'm not a fan of it, but I think using it sparingly and in these moments that are like very high camp, I think is appropriate. It was just it was odd. If it was funny to you, good.
Yeah, I will say, as soon as I heard that music, the first thing that went into my mind was, I wonder what Matthew's going to think about this, thinking about the Survivor UK coverage the entire time. I was like, it's the top. But I'm not going to lie, the lad montage was, I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah.
I was just like, it's so stupid. It made me it did make me appreciate them in the sense of, okay, it's not all serious, like, I'm here for it. The only thing I didn't appreciate is when they all called bacon overrated. No, how dare you? I like bacon. They all called it. There was this little conversation. I pick up on these things.
Yeah, you do.
There was this little conversation, and Austin started it, and he was like, no, I don't care for bacon. It's overrated. And everyone agreed. And I was like, are you taking the mick? I was like, what? Bacon?
Totally missed that.
I heard that too. I thought the same thing. I was like, I really like bacon. Why are they crapping on it? Please save the bacon.
Well, I think and then like game talk wise, when it came to these moments, I think we saw the people on the reward, the sanctuary, those castaways talked about Bruce. Like, Bruce has got to be next. I think it was important to flag that. Was this when Katora told them, like, hey, Bruce is going to try to tell you that he lost his idol. He didn't. And then we have the strategy talk with the reward challenge losers, that was basically Bruce was saying like D should go home next. Bruce tells Jake that Julie doesn't want to target D. I mean, all of this doesn't necessarily mean anything for the rest of this episode, except maybe targeting Julie. And then Jake tells Drew that Bruce is targeting D. And I think that Bruce had the strategy of like, let the information get to Reba. And I'm confused as to what, I know what he was trying to do with the idol thing, but I'm not sure what it was about the strategy of letting Reba know who his target was. I don't know, but also I have to show this from Mackenzie before we go too much further. Bacon is greater than sandwiches. Very much agreed.
We agree, Mackenzie.
What did you two think about Bruce's gameplay here? I started losing track of what the ultimate goal was. Obviously, keep him in the game. But...
You started losing track. I started losing faith. Yeah, just it was one of those. I've been trying to somewhat give Bruce merit, but yeah, there was nothing in this part. I was like, because I feel like it was for me, as soon as that lie was there, this episode, I was just like, I then was just seeing the plot holes everywhere, and I was like, oh, that's all I can say on that one. Phil?
You know, like I said, like I think when I first saw it, weirdly enough, I actually had faith in this, and it's one of those things. Like, look, bluffing, not having an idol is a little wild, obviously, but at the same time, like people have done it before, or at the very least, bluffing a play and then not playing it. And I mean, that was the Tony strategy for a while. Oh, in my bag of tricks, and then he would just not play it, and he would just move on. And it's like, oh my god, he still has the idol. Like, how do we get rid of it? And it's like, obviously, the way to get rid of it is to have a split where you're actually stacking the heavier side of the split on the person with the idol. Does that leave you more vulnerable for something to possibly happen? Obviously. But if you don't do that, you could just have people bluffing their way to keeping an idol for a longer and a more extended amount of time than they probably should. And so, look, we're in the 40s. Like, this does not work as consistently as it used to in, season 28, for instance. Or even, I feel like Ben did it with the Ben bombs a little bit. We're sort of you're really making a show of your idol, or you're really making a show of the status of your idol to sort of punk people. And I think, I very quickly was reminded, hey, we're in the 40s. This does not work.
Yeah.
It reminded me of Jamie from 44, who had like the opposite thing happen, which she literally lost her idol and wasn't able to convince anyone else otherwise of that fact. So, I mean, again, I'm with you, Phil. I didn't lose faith at this moment with Bruce, but I just was confused as to the strategy here and what the intention was with this. It kind of seems like it was like, I'm going to let it slide that my idol's gone from the game. I'm going to let it slide that my target is D. And then maybe at Tribal Council, I will vote for someone else that's not D and have everyone vote for me and I play my idol. I think that might be what it was, but curious to ponder over. Then we have Emily, who decides to tell Drew again that like, hey, I got back from the reward. And just so you know, the whole thing about Bruce losing his idol is false. He has it. And basically also saying that, telling Jake, this is where Emily's strategy, like, I really like it, because Emily's like, I don't want Jake to disrespect me when he gets onto the jury. So I'm going to include him in the information and basically inform him that he is the backup if Bruce does not end up going home this episode. And this causes Jake to be like, I am not the backup vote, or I have to stop being the backup vote. Yeah. And he throws out Drew's name. And of course it gets back to Drew, and they have this it was a good conversation. I wish it lasted a little bit longer in the episode, because I thought it was going to, based on the next week on for last week. But it was a nice little moment. It was funny.
I think this is where we really saw Emily's jury management, because, and this is where I want to say, this is where we've seen jury management done successfully. Because we've seen someone do something similar, Coach, and it's really not worked. but this time, like, I feel like it was really successful, and it was the funny thing that before it even got to the argument, it was like the Chinese whispers, because it was like Drew and Emily had the conversation, then Emily went and told Jake, then Jake told Julie then went all the way back over to Drew, and then Drew kind of was like, what's going on? So that was funny. But yeah, it was, I feel like in that argument as well, we kind of saw, and again, I mentioned at the first part, we were seeing good and bad kind of developments of people. I feel like this wasn't a good one for Drew, because I don't think we always see when people are so openly to confront people about having their name out there. And I'm trying to say this nicely. It wasn't that we saw Drew's arrogance, but I feel like we kind of saw Drew's because Drew's been so comfortable in the game, he's been in such a safe position that he felt like he was able to call Jake out. And even then, when Jake talks about the double standards of, well, you said my names and I've always been on the bottom, so why can't I say your name? It doesn't feel good, does it? And then Drew sat there being like, oh, whatever you're doing. And I was like, Jake's making some valid points, though. I don't know, Phil, what did you think about it?
I mean, I just loved it. I love a Survivor argument. I'm sorry. Like, I hope it doesn't make me, terribly toxic. But it's just like, this is a show where you're fighting for $1 million, dude. Like, it's not supposed to be this, I don't know. Like, I wouldn't roll over for $1 million. Like, I would give it a fight. And I love that. Even the thought of your name being put out there by someone you thought that you trusted. Yes, as a Survivor, you should expect that. But at the same time, like, I'm happy that it hurt Drew's feelings. I'm happy that he was like, what the hell? And then I'm happy that Jake was sitting there like, well, yeah, dude, like, well, you've been throwing my name out. Like, once again, it's an argument where they both sort of have like room to be making their argument for what it's worth. And I think that makes it more enjoyable. It's not this straight up beatdown. It's just like, it's two people that are clearly disagreeing about, I guess their ethos in the game and how it should be played. And I just really, really, I loved it. I love it. I love a Survivor argument. It does make it feel more old school. Old school, there were always arguments. In new school, everyone plays so friendly, and it's also nice. I like the sportsmanship. It's great, but this is fun. Like, more of this.
I do like when game ideologies clash. Like, I think that's a really fun thing when two players aren't playing the game in certain ways and they like want the other person to play it in that way. It's very interesting. We are going to take a very quick break and then we'll be right back to talk about the immunity challenge.
My name is Jonah Fielko, and I'm the CEO of Bracketology.tv, fantasy sports for reality television. We offer fantasy games for shows like The Bachelor, Survivor, Big Brother, RuPaul's Drag Race, and counting. You start by creating a community. Within your community, you can create a fantasy league for each show that you want to play fantasy games for. Within the league, you can choose up to 3 of our 4 game types, and our most popular is the Advanced League. Choose a team of contestants, and depending on what they do and say during the episode, that's how your team will gain or lose points each week. We also have elimination-style games like our Confidence Pool. This is where you choose how confident you are that each contestant will survive elimination that week. And we've also got March Madness-style brackets. Come back a couple hours after the episode to check your scores and watch you climb the leaderboard. Bracketology is free to play, so grab your friends, your family, your coworkers, and head to bracketology.tv for more info.
Bracketology has been such a great partner with Survivor Now podcast. If you're involved in the Survivor Now fantasy league, please let us know how you're doing. I know those prizes for first, second, and third place are really incredible. So let us know in the comments, how are you doing? Are you still in the running, or do you think you're going to win? So let us know. We have the immunity challenge, which I'm not sure if we've seen this before. Have we?
It's only ever been done once.
Okay.
As far as I'm aware, I believe if it's been done a second time, I can't remember. It was the final immunity challenge that was done in Survivor 14 Fiji.
Oh, wow. All right. Really digging into the archives there. I loved this. Basically, everyone has to like hold themselves up on a ramp that is slanted towards water. And the last person who is still on their ramp at the end of the challenge wins immunity. Very simple and very good. And we get this. I think the thing that comes out of this that sticks with me the most is Katurah.
Yeah.
And really just seeing how uncomfortable she was with the whole situation of the immunity challenge. I like really related to this, and there's something about being in the open water, and I think also the fact that at the time that Katurah wanted to drop was like Emily was kind of already out of the water. I get this feeling too, where like I'm a strong swimmer, but being in the deep body of water really gets me. It doesn't feel great. So like I was really empathetic to this whole thing. It's a really scary feeling, and I just felt so nervous for Katurah at this point.
Yeah, I made the comment to my buddy. I had a friend texting me through this episode, and he's a new Survivor fan. He's a Survivor baby, and he was like really. He was obviously a little angry. He was like, "How would someone show up on Survivor and not know how to swim? Whatever." And I was like, "Dude, I don't think she like doesn't know how to swim. There's a difference between people who genuinely show up, and with love and respect to our friend Keith from Edge of Extinction." People who just like literally don't know how to swim at all versus people. I mean, you saw it even at the end when Jeff was like, "Oh, like
yeah,
you can hop off, you can jump in and swim the boat with the rest of your tribe," and she didn't just do like a patty cake jump. She like dove in, and she was doing a true breaststroke. And I was like, okay, or freestyle. Like I was like, she knows how to swim. To your point, Matthew, she simply is not comfortable with being out in open water, and I can understand that too. Like for me, I actually, really enough, I'm not scared of heights. I can stand on like a tall building, whatever, but I don't love roller coasters. And so people are always confused, like, "Oh, you're scared of heights," and I'm like, no, like put me on the top of the Empire State Building. If I'm standing there, like I have full autonomy, like I have control over my body, like I'm comfortable there. Put me on a roller coaster where I'm literally locked into a machine. For some reason, I just don't vibe with it, What is
the opposite?
Yeah,
I'm the complete opposite.
You can do roller coasters, you can't do regular
like roller coasters. I can get mind over matter on. No, fun fact: the one time I've ever been to the Empire State Building, I was on the first floor and I was in floods of tears just because of knowing how high it was. I had to have because I was like, I think 14, 15 at this point. And I literally had to have like one of the adults literally like prep me to go up because they could tell I was absolutely terrified. Fun fact. But yeah, I actually also think with Katurah, I think this is where we kind of saw, because I think it links back to the letters from home, because I think that was a very big moment for her, because she wasn't expecting it in Survivor to hear from, obviously, her mum, who she's cut herself off with. And I think we kind of saw her slightly, that's where she was in her head. But also with the body of water thing, I get it, because I have a best friend who, if she can't touch the bottom of the bottom, she freaks out. So I get it. It's that open water, not knowing how deep it is. So I did feel for her. Also, just clarifying, there was a slight difference between how they did this challenge in Fiji, but I just thought I'd mention that.
Okay, but the idea is the same, it sounds like.
Yeah, idea is the same. In Fiji, basically it was on a tilt, but basically Jeff was cranking it so the tilt got, like the slant got less and less. Whereas this time they did it with the handholds going down. It was the same thing, but it's still the same premise. So I just want to clarify that.
And you're right, Ollie. I love that I mean, I don't love that it did. And we'll get into this discussion a little bit too, but from a storytelling perspective, it was nice that even if it didn't fully tie in to Katurah, the episode made it feel that way. And it makes me, honestly, it makes me kind of sad. I know that Katurah voiced when she opened the letter from her mom earlier in the episode. I have a quote here that I'll just kind of find real quick, but she basically says like she doesn't want the sad stuff to hinder her game. Yeah. And it really got me thinking, like, what is the ethics behind the Castaway family letters here? Because we've only ever seen it affect players in a positive manner, right? Like it's only ever fueled players in the past, at least from what I remember. Whereas here, this was the first time where I was like, yeah, it actually might be like a situation where production may have to do some homework or figure out from the castaway, like, who would you like to have letters delivered to you by? Because I would feel terrible for Katurah if this was something that really clouded the game for her in this moment. And I think that would be a disadvantage and sort of unfair. So I do hope that like we're going to see Katurah playing strong these next few episodes. I think even in this episode, she had a very strong idea and strategy, which we'll get into after the immunity challenge. But it really got me thinking about those family letters and like the ethics behind it. So it's an interesting thing to figure out. Yeah,
I will say I do think she was able to bounce back because we saw that during the pre-tribal. But definitely for this challenge, I think where she already had that fear and then going on from the emotion that she had just been feeling, I think that probably it did come into play to a degree, not like a major degree, but I feel like her head was already swelling of that thought, and it just didn't help her. But I will actually also give Jeff some props there because I feel like he handled what she was doing very well. Because I know that he's been like, again, I think it's a completely different thing, like with how he's dealing with quitters, but I think he could kind of tell that it wasn't just she wanted to quit. He could tell like something was going on. Like it wasn't a normal thing for her. So I do want to give Jeff props there. There we go.
I'm right there with you. Jeff could have been a huge asshole here, and he was like an understanding, like a great host. He did a great job with this. Also, we got a little chat from Abbott here. Katurah for the win. There we go. We got some Katurah fans in the chat.
Great.
And I like seeing Katurah get some love. You know, like I think that there are some people who believe that, oh, spoiler alert, now that Bruce is out of the game, Katurah, some people I've heard say like, oh, Katurah doesn't have a storyline anymore. But that's not true. And that's not like how playing the game of Survivor works. And I know the episode's really focused on Katurah's relationship to Bruce. But I have seen Katurah make some really good judgment calls, especially with strategy, which we'll get into in a little bit. But we get this showdown between Austin and Bruce. I was like on the edge of my seat because I was like, is Bruce really going to score a turkey here and get 3 immunity challenges in a row? Like that would be awesome. But alas, it was Austin who ends up winning immunity this time. And we go into some strategy at the beach.
We do. We do. I'm trying to remember it now. This is where I feel like we saw Katurah bounce back because she was obviously the one that kind of initiated a kind of switcheroo and being like, why don't we go for Mama J? There's a reason we all call her Mama J. And I feel like this was a really good showing for Katurah, but Emily. Because we kind of saw what Emily wanted to do here, but I kind of want to get Phil's thoughts on it as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, Emily was definitely the playmaker here, but I do think it's interesting that we sort of had the first little droplets of like, oh crap, someone's name from Reba is actually gaining a little bit of traction. Granted, it was not, this like this groundbreaking, oh my God, this could change everything, but the fact that it became believable that people could be putting votes on Julie in itself at this point in the game was like a little surprising to me in a way. When I first heard Julie's name be thrown out, I almost was like, wow, are they actually going to do this? Are they actually going to throw? Are they actually going to get Julie out here? And then of course I started walking it back a little bit. I was like, okay, this isn't really going to happen. But yes, I even think that, Katurah throwing out Julie, sort of these conversations getting started and her being, in my opinion, on a good side of those conversations being started. It felt good to see some sort of movement that wasn't just, same as always. Although the votes at Tribal were sort of same as always. It's like, is it going to be Bruce or Jake? But I thought that it was fun that at the very least we're getting some names, percolating to the surface there.
And it was an interesting choice, I would say. It was an interesting editing choice that it was introduced as it was Emily's plan to end up say, okay, Katurah gave Julie's name. Emily took that, started spreading that around, saying to Bruce, "You can play your idol, but like we need your vote to be on Julie." But then showing that Emily's plan was and having that conversation with Katurah, saying, "Hey, I believe you. I know Julie needs to go, but I feel like this is a great opportunity to take out Bruce, and then we can get Julie." And I think it was a very interesting, because it didn't leave it up to the question at Tribal Council wasn't, to me at least, wasn't is Bruce or Julie going home. It was, is Bruce going to play the idol? Like, that was the question to me, because I had already gone into Tribal Council thinking, kind of knowing where the votes were landing, it was just going to be exciting as to, was this plan going to work?
Yeah, I think this was, dare I say it, I feel like this was like kind of everyone else, like everyone had been playing a really good game of Survivor, and kind of Emily just went, well, let's just show you how you can do even better. Because she was able to kind of almost play double agent, because she was like, here's what's going on, but also here's what's going on. And she was able to do it so effortlessly, which I really appreciated. And again, seeing how, and it's this evolution of Emily, because we saw how she was at the start of the game. Did any of us think that she would be able to kind of have this sort of gameplay? No.
Never.
So, yeah. And so seeing it, I was almost like, just because she's on my draft, I was like a proud dad. I was like, well done. I was like, you go. But yeah, I feel like truly when it came to the pre-tribal and the tribal and the moves that occurred, all credit to Emily. Like,
it honestly was a one of the most impressive, like, subtle moves I've seen in a little bit. Because I think that what is different about Emily is, and maybe this is sort of her take, because she might know that she is naturally a more brash human. She goes, I don't need to put my name and my stamp all over everything. I will claim this as mine at the end, and no one will be able to tell me anything different. But for right now, let's just make this a quick, subtle move. It was really like her, literally, like, it was interesting to watch her be like, hey, I know how Bruce thinks at this point. I have paid enough attention to him where I know that I can make sure that he feels comfortable enough to not play it. And if he thinks it's going on someone else, we all throw it on him. That's the checkmate right there. We don't even we don't need to do too much. We just need Bruce to defeat himself, which truly was like, it was very impressive. It didn't take a bunch of idols. She's like, oh, and I have this widget, and I have idol nullifier, and we'll throw these things at the wall. No. She kept it like very very, very clean strategy. I was very appreciative of what you did here.
Yeah, it was lovely. And I think and also Emily made it look effortless. And I think there might have been nothing is ever easy in Survivor, as we know, but the situation just may have lined up so perfectly. And I think I wasn't actually surprised that Emily was able to formulate this plan. I thought it was well within her to ever since I saw her game really ramping up at episode 3 of the season. I think what was going to be the real tell here about Emily's game was if she was going to be able to influence others, right? Katurah had the plan to get Julie. Was Emily going to be able to say, let's do Bruce now, Julie later? Was that going to be a smooth process for her? And I think it really showed that Emily put in the effort into the relationships where she needed to in order to be able to get this plan across. But we also, like you said, Phil, the thing with Bruce too, and about how Bruce sort of played himself in this moment, was in the edit, we have seen him sort of be a bit of a jokester, a bit of a trickster with I left the flint. The flint fell out of my pocket. We don't have flint. Being the goofiness, right? And this was really interesting because now it's sort of like a cry wolf situation where he's saying, I'm playing my idol. I'm playing my idol. I'm playing my idol. And people are there on the beach being like, will he? I don't think he will.
Yeah. I feel like it's because as well, he started off with this idol lie. And I feel like that lie has caused more and more distrust, and kind of everyone, like, it's taken a lot of credibility away, because like you've said, he'll say it, but will he do it? Probably not, because it will just be a joke. because that's the kind of bravado he's decided to kind of go in. That's the pattern that we've seen. So yeah, that's what I mean when I was like, the faith was just going and going.
Yeah. And we go to tribal council, and everything plays out kind of exactly to the plan of blindsiding Bruce, right? I mean, we should also talk about, Phil.
Did you ever think that Bruce was actually going to play his idol? What would going into tribal as you're sitting there watching? Like, I want to get that, because I will admit, my friend, same thing. He goes, dude, who's leaving? Call it right now. I did not say Bruce as we were going into tribal, even though I thought to myself, I was like, I said Jake.
Oh, okay.
Jake. So I think it's interesting that, like, Survivor, despite me knowing Bruce myself, sort of how Survivor likes to edit, whatever, I was definitely fooled. I was like, oh, Bruce, he's gonna play it, right? Or at the very least, like, he curved people where they're gonna do a sort of like, I don't know, 5-3 split, and it's gonna be on Jake. So I thought this was really interesting. What did you guys think?
No, do you know what? I do think that the editing team did do a really good job of giving us that mist of the potentials, because there were times I was like, oh, could he be playing it? I'm not sure. But I think the reason was, again, we kind of go back a little bit to the confessional just before we go to tribal of Emily. And it was her kind of saying, if Bruce doesn't play his idol, my plan has worked. And I feel like that's where we had the segue onto, will he or won't he? And so that's where I was kind of seeing and trying to gauge. But I mean, it was, that's all I can really say on it.
I can't tell if I was getting, I can't tell if I was reading into the edit or reading into the strategy. Because if that's the only thing, is he should have played it. Like, that's what I kept thinking, is I feel like no matter what, at this point, the fact that everyone knows you have an idol, the fact that everyone thinks you are going to be playing the idol, you should just play the idol. Like, so what if you wasted it? Like, it's become such a topic of discussion at the camp. This is your first time without immunity. Just play it. And that's at least my opinion on the situation. There could have been, right, if it had worked out and it was actually going to be a Julie blindside, which seemed very plausible, it could have been a really great move on Bruce to read the situation and say, I don't have to play it, and I'll make it one more week with the idol and with the chance of winning immunity again. But at that point, I just felt like he should have. And Phil, I'm not sure. And maybe that's me saying that I didn't fully believe that he would be the one to go home, because I really wasn't sure at that point who would actually walk away with it, except for the fact that they did outline Emily's strategy pretty nice. Yeah.
I also think maybe one of the only things that, going along with, we knew kind of the strategy and how people would be presenting at Tribal Council, I think one of the other things that potentially deterred Bruce from playing his idol was how Emily was speaking. Because I don't know what it was about this tribal, and me and my partner both said this. When we were listening to Emily, she had this almost reassuring articulation. Like, when she was just speaking, it was almost just like she had such lovely articulation in what she was saying that you almost felt reassured. And potentially that's what was happening with Bruce. He was like, okay, I'm getting the cues from Emily, we're all good. Like, I don't know if either of you two saw that, but that was my kind of thing.
I definitely noticed.
I think, I think Emily did a good job at being reassuring.
But hey, what happened. Our friend Bruce did not play the idol. How about that?
And paid the price for it. And we had, here's the moment, right? So we talked about at the beginning of today's episode, Jake. And is Jake still our first choice for a winner? No. I don't know. Right. I think
I will tell you, for me, he is not. He is no longer.
Let's talk about this moment here, Phil, because Jake talks about his imposter syndrome. He talks about his insecurities. He talks about feeling like he's playing the game dumb. And we saw that throughout this episode too. We didn't talk about it because there was more strategy involved there, but we did see Jake really struggling with his position in the game and feeling like he's not doing a good job at it. But also having that cut to Kelly and Kelly and Caleb and Kendra talk about, oh, he's breaking my heart here. I was kind of like, oh, interesting. I don't know, right? There's the fact that it chose to cut to that. It might not be strong. And I think, Phil, maybe you and I predicted the wrong person to win, but like, gotta roll with it.
Yeah.
He's not out yet.
Yeah, he's not out yet. Skin of his teeth, Jake here. It's tough to see, man. And especially, you have Jake calling him a puppy dog. I mean, these are not like endearing terms. I know Kendra, like, we obviously missed something, but he has that moment where he just turns and stares at her. Like, I find it hard to believe that people are going to want to vote for him. It's hard to see. But I mean, look, we're getting closer. We will certainly be finding out soon. So,
yeah. Well, I mean, Emily, I said at the beginning of the coverage of the season, the people in my eyes that were sort of sticking out to me were Emily and Jake in terms of the edit of the episode. So we'll see who ends up on top later at the end of this game. That's going to be really interesting. Next time on Survivor, we get the notion that there is going to be the original Reba tribe is going to start separating and dispersing. And that's going to be really interesting. Ollie, who do you think out of the four of the Reba Alliance would be at risk most of going home?
Drew, and I don't want to put this notion out there, D. The reason I say those is because obviously D has had such a big kind of target for the last couple of episodes. And I feel like we've kind of almost we've been getting little kind of like nuggets of almost this Drew demise, because we kind of saw the argument that Drew and Jake had. And obviously we've kind of seen the fact that on the next time Drew's name's mentioned, this person's name's mentioned. So I feel like there could be a bit of a Drew demise, especially if he approaches it in the way that I've kind of been seeing as, we are the four, why should we break? Everyone stick to their roles. But then Julie's the one that sits there and goes, but this role isn't serving a good purpose for me. Like, it's helping you guys, but it's not helping me. I'm just being the one that has to take the damage. So I could see it really being Drew's downfall, but also we kind of also see that thing of D. So I feel like it could be Drew or D. But hopefully more Drew, not D. We like D. We just stand Drew.
Yeah, it's tough to say. I mean, ultimately, we all know how Survivor likes to edit their teasers.
Yeah.
When they say something in a tease, that is not always exactly what happens. Sometimes there's like a, maybe we're going to get something where Drew and Julie talk in the beginning. They go, hey, let's like fake and throw out each other's names, and so we can get the wool over Emily and Jake's eyes. We're going to vote for them. Like, you never really know. But if someone from Reba's going, I have to imagine it would be Julie, right? Like, I don't know why that's where my head is going. But
Phil, I'm not far off from your thought process too here, because I feel like one of two things are going to happen with Julie. We've seen that Julie is really struggling with the betrayal aspect of the game when it came to Kelly and Kendra. But then we also she's been voicing like, oh, I know that the Reba 4 are going to have to turn against each other soon. And the question is, will she be able to take that first step in initiating the process, which she kind of needs to do, or will the others outplay her? So that's going to be a really interesting question to see. You're right, Phil. There's a chance that none of the 4 from the Reba Alliance are going home next week, and it's all just a ploy to get us to watch the episode and be excited for it. But no matter what happens, a red herring. I'm excited to see episode 11 and what is going to happen with the final 7 players of Survivor 45. We are going to be here next Sunday to talk about that episode as well and do our thorough review and analysis of it. Okay. Of course, as Ollie mentioned, he and I are covering Survivor UK as well. So make sure you're checking out those videos if you're watching along with that season, or if you're not and you just want to stay in the know about what's going on in the Survivor world. Thank you all so much for joining us, and we will see you at a later time.
And we love Survivor. Come back.